Welcome to Mio on MMA. I am Mike, aka Mio, and last night we had UFC 274, which was a mixed bag for sure. Great main event, really bad co-main event, couple of other sloggy fights along the way, but overall, not a bad card. Like honestly, the only fight that is worth completely shitting on is the Esparza Rose Namajunas fight. Everything else was, if it wasn't great, it was what it was expected to be. So you're always prepared for that. Like when a fight has low expectations and it's not very good, it doesn't feel nearly as bad as it does when you have a fight with expectations that doesn't really come together. I think the greatest example of this would be like Moreno Figueiredo's last fight, which I built up so much in my head that it wasn't actually all that great to watch. Despite the fact that by all means, it was a great fight. It's just the expectation, the bar was so high that I was left feeling kind of flat after it. And maybe I'm alone on that, but that was my take from that particular fight. So when Blagoy Ivanov versus Marco Shigerio de Lima is not exactly a barn burner, I wasn't expecting it to be. So there's not really any problem. Picks wise, I went 7-7. I think I probably could have done better. I lost most of the split decisions, and I don't know if I would classify any of the splits as a robbery, but for example, I really do think that Clayton Rodriguez won his fight. I think that was the wrong decision, even if it's not a robbery of highlight proportions or anything like that. And it was a disappointing fight from Rodriguez's point of view. I thought that was a very friendly matchup to him. We'll talk about it more in detail, but I don't know if it was maybe a UFC debut adrenaline drop or dump. There you go. That's the word. Or whatever. Or maybe there's just more gaps in his game than I was really thinking of. Maybe he's more prone to being pressured than I really expected. But that was a little bit disappointing. As for Bellator, we'll talk about Bellator and PFL. Just real quick, because I don't have much to say. The Bellator card went largely how I thought it would be. Mike Shipman lost. That was maybe the one surprise. But even that's not really a surprise because Mike Shipman will lose random fights. It's kind of his gimmick. There's so many defensive holes in his game that a diverse fighter, a deep fighter, is going to find a ways to give him some level of trouble that probably they shouldn't. So it'll cause him to lose fights that he probably shouldn't. And this to me was just one of those. Nothing else about the card was all that surprising or super interesting. Lorenz Larkin versus Kyle Stewart, that was fun. It was a good fight. Go check that out. Yoel Romero getting a third round stoppage, also very cool. Avoid the Bader versus Congo fight. That one was not good. And then in PFL, it was a weird one because there were a number of upsets. A number of underdogs did win. A number of people that I thought were going to win lost. But it honestly just felt like a lot of them came out kind of flat, as opposed to the other fighter making great strides. Abby Montez just might not be as good as we're kind of hoping. Gleason Tebow would just look kind of lifeless. Vanessa Melo losing was pretty surprising and disappointing. I thought when Melo was coming up and doing, sort of attracting the attention, the eye, and so on that eventually led her to the UFC, I thought she was a fairly reasonable fighter. It's just, it hasn't really come together. I mean, she went 1-3 in the UFC. Now, granted, losing to Irene Aldana, Tracy Cortez, and Carol Hossa, not a problem. Those are three very solid fighters, and beating Sarah Moras. But this loss does kind of, it makes me reevaluate. But we'll see. We'll see. One loss does not make a career, and she's still probably way better than her 11-9 record would indicate. And then, of course, the other loss that was pretty surprising was Julia Budd losing. Again, I thought it was just kind of Julia Budd not doing terribly well. And then Sal Ceferino lost a split decision against a late notice replacement opponent. And Ray Cooper lost to Carlos Leal. Now, Carlos Leal did pull off some good stuff. I really like his clinch work. but it really did more feel like this was like just I don't know. Cooper's been overperforming for quite some time, and this was kind of a reversion back to what we probably thought about him maybe 2 years ago, before he started kind of like really making noise. Like just pull up his record here real quick. Like he's the guy that lost in PFL back in 2019 to John Howard and drew with Sabu Sai. And then he kind of really started doing some good things. Like he beat David Mashad, which was a fight he was probably supposed to lose. He beat Rory McDonald. He beat Magomed Magakiramov. But this is kind of more of a reversion to form. We'll see. I don't know. Cooper just seems to be a fighter who kind of goes up and down and up and down. And I don't know. I still don't know what the real Ray Cooper III is in terms of an in the cage product. Now let's talk about the UFC 280. Why do I keep thinking it's UFC 280? UFC 274. Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Obviously, the big news was, of course, that Oliveira missed weight. Now, it has been reported that a lot of the fighters thought that the scales were behaving very, very oddly. So I do definitely feel a lot of sympathy for Charles Oliveira in regards to missing weight and getting the belt stripped. And obviously, I think that probably is... It's one of those things where, like, it is... The rules are the rules, but at the same time, they feel kind of like stupid rules. Because the scales can be off. I mean, that's the reason there is the 1 pound allowance for non-title fights. And there definitely was a lot of like half pound shenanigans going on the card, on the weigh-ins. And yeah, generally feel bad about it, but he did win his fight, so he'll be back in the title picture. I will say an interesting, but in my opinion, completely baseless conspiracy theory kind of came out of the whole Charles Oliveira missing weight. And that was the idea that they wanted the title to get vacated so they could give Conor McGregor a title shot. And I just don't understand this one. A couple of people on social media who really seem to subscribe to this theory were arguing very passionately that this meant something, that something was going over my head. And it might be. There's obviously that chance. There's always the chance that I just have missed something. It happens. But I don't honestly get it, and no one was really able to answer the question, because the question essentially was that, like, with increased scrutiny on Conor McGregor's losses and the antitrust lawsuit and stuff like that, that they would have to go with extra justification for giving Conor a title shot. But the problem is that if you're looking at Conor's record, whether it's a vacant title or a title shot against Charles Oliveira, either way, it doesn't really matter. There's not a lot in his recent repertoire that actually justifies a title shot. And the antitrust thing just doesn't actually apply, because the antitrust lawsuit has never been about what happens in the cage or like their title shot granting policies or anything like that. It's simply anti-competitive language within the contracts themselves. They can... Like, it's not an antitrust lawsuit issue to give Conor a title shot. And if we break it down, I think MMA fans would break into 4 categories when it comes to really anything Conor. You have the Conor Army. These are Conor McGregor fans who believe he is the greatest ever and will pretty much accept anything that benefits Conor. If it's a title shot, they're happy. These are the people that are calling for him to, like, go up to 170 and fight Kamaru Usman. So, like, okay, like... Doesn't matter if it's vacant or if it's a quote normal title shot. They're going to cheer for it. They're going to buy it. There's the super casual angle, and these are people that just don't particularly pay attention to MMA. And here's the thing: whether they're Conor fans or not, they only really know what's happening when Conor is fighting. So they're they're just going to assume he's earned a title shot. You have the Conor haters. They're going to hate it either way. Doesn't matter if it's a vacant title or if it's a regular title shot. They're not going to be behind it. And then there's the sporting fans, which are people like me who, like, I don't hate Conor McGregor as a fighter. As a person, Conor McGregor is unappealing. But really after he became a big superstar. Before that, I actually didn't really have much of a problem. I just didn't really understand the appeal of his trash talk. I mean, I remember specifically the best example being like the lead up to the Jose Aldo fight with the if this were the I'm not going to do an Irish accent. I'm really bad at it. If this were olden times, I would ride a horse into his village and enslave every working age man. And it's like, you're Irish. This doesn't work. The Irish are largely, and he's not even like upper class Irish. Like he's lower class Irish. I mean that's like his thing. Like I was an apprentice plumber. I'm a normal Joe who's made it big, and it's like, okay, but like if we're back in the olden times of like the structures of um, horses and nobility and so on, you're a foot soldier at best. But anyways, so like I never really bought into a lot of his trash talk, his gimmick, whatever. But I also didn't have a problem with it. It's like, okay, you do you. I'm never against a fighter earning money. Uh, whatever appeals, whatever gets you over. It doesn't matter if it works on me. It's, does it work on somebody? And it definitely did. But the sports fans, people are going to object to this because it's a stupid title shot. The next title shot should probably go to Islam Makhachev by the UFC's own rankings. He's the number 3 rated fighter. I'm not in the camp of like Makhachev needs the next title shot. Like there are people who insist that like there's no argument against it. It's like, this is obvious. He's the next coming of Khabib or whatever. I'm not in that camp, but he is definitely the most logical source. And if we're going down the list, Conor McGregor is quite far down the list in terms of logical title shots from a sporting standpoint. So they wouldn't be on it with whether it's vacant or whether it's occupied. So the vacant title doesn't do anything for getting Conor into a title shot. It really doesn't. I'm not saying the UFC will not give Conor McGregor a title shot. I'm just saying that this weight miss doesn't make it more likely or less likely. It's the variables haven't actually really changed. So this conspiracy theory doesn't really drive a lot. I mean, it's not completely baseless in the sense that obviously the UFC is going to do things and handle things in the lightweight division or wherever Conor is fighting much differently than other divisions. But I think it's pretty far-fetched that this is even needed to give Conor a title shot. Like we've had Justin Eilers off of a loss get a title shot with no notable wins. Probably is the most famous example. But even to use Conor's, like, goes up from featherweight to middleweight or featherweight to lightweight, gets a title shot against Eddie Alvarez. Like even that wasn't even justified really. Sure, champion versus champion, so there's like some periphery frills, but it was 2 champions that hadn't defended their belts. Like it wasn't like Anderson Silva going up to fight John Jones or GSP going up to fight Anderson Silva or something like that, where you have like 2 cleaned out divisions. No. You had 2 new champions who hadn't defended the belt fighting each other. Like it's not exactly something that the UFC has done a lot of, and it definitely was poorly justified at that time. You could still give him a title shot now, and it's just the same. It's the same conversation. Let us move on to the actual fights. So Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. What can I say about this fight other than wow? Both guys hurt multiple times. Both guys coming back. Both guys fighting at an incredible pace. This was ridiculous. This one round had more action than probably some of the fights on the card. Actually, hang on. I want to pull up the... Yeah. So in the first round of this fight, significant strikes 30-21. So 51 significant strikes landed. For comparison purposes, over 5 rounds, the co-main event had 67 landed, which is insane. This had more than the Chandler versus Ferguson fight, which in itself was fairly insane. And that lasted to the second round. That was longer. It had more significant strikes landed than the Royval versus Schnell fight, which was an insane pace, although admittedly a shorter one. So that's a bad example. But yeah, like fight that went 3 minutes and 22 seconds had more significant strikes landed in it. Almost more significant strikes than a fight that went 5 rounds. That's insane. And eventually Charles Oliveira gets the rear naked choke. Oliveira is always going to be this interesting thing where and people get offended about this when it's like he's listed almost always as one of the most beatable UFC champions. And it's two things. Number one, it's for a UFC champion, we've seen him lose a lot. He's gone through a career renaissance, getting to the title after being kind of written off. So there's always going to be that impression that we've seen him lose. Therefore, he's got issues. Additionally, there's the fact that he is getting hurt in basically every first round. Possibly that's just an eyesight issue. We know he is like kind of blind, but he does get hurt every first round, every first fight. And what other champion can you say that about? Like there's Glover Teixeira, who should be listed pretty high on the list of like beatable champions. That's kind of about it. So it's very logical to think that Charles Oliveira can lose. It's very logical that if they rematch this fight, you think he can lose. It's very logical that if he rematches with Chandler, he could lose. It's very logical that if he rematches with Dustin Poirier, he could lose. So, I mean, obviously that's going to be a tenuous position for a champion. He could possibly get knocked out by Conor McGregor if they fight, because Conor McGregor is very good at finishing someone once they are hurt. He's also very good at hurting somebody. So that's a first round that is pretty turbulent, actually. But, I mean, Charles is definitely developing the point where the mental toughness is there. He's no longer giving up once he's hurt. He's going to fight back, and he is going to go for it. And it's damn impressive. Like, I'm loving it. Even if my brain is going to forever not really wrap itself around the idea that he is absolutely going to be able to do this time and time again. That, like, in a year's time, are we going to be seeing Charles Oliveira carrying a belt? I don't know. We're unfortunately not seeing it now because it's technically a vacant belt because it's stripping with the half-pound thing, but we went over that. The fight went at a faster pace than I was expecting it to. Like, I thought, like, second or third round it would take to get, like, Oliveira to get in there. Sort of like the Poirier fight, sort of like the Chandler fight. This one was at a much accelerated pace in that regard. But it went pretty much according to plan. Oliveira's got some defensive issues early on in fights when it comes to being on the feet. Gets hurt. And, of course, Justin Gaethje does not have the most defensively considered style. We saw that against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Well, we've seen that in all of his fights, but we've seen in the specific aspects of what led to Oliveira's win here. We'd seen it in the Alvarez fight. We'd seen it in the Khabib fight. Is that he is a good wrestler, but at the same time, he's so aggressive and open that you're going to get opportunities to get him down. And when you do, you just don't want to be on the mat with Charles Oliveira. There's not a ton more to say about this fight, which is disappointing because it's an amazing fight, and I don't really want to go on to the co-main event, but here we go. Co-main event, Carla Esparza challenging for the strawweight title against Rose Namajunas. Carla won the fight, officially. I think that if I actually score the fight with my judge's hat on, I probably give it to Thug Rose. The first round was dead even. The second round saw Carla land slightly more strikes and be more active, so I guess that goes to her. And then I got to give Rose the third round, despite the fact that Esparza had the more interesting stuff because you went for takedowns, didn't get them, but like that's a more attention grabbing thing than landing 11 strikes apparently. Esparza won the fourth, and then I would have to give Rose the fifth. So by this logic, I have it 2-2 with a 10-10 first round. Technically, I think you probably have to go 48-47 Rose. But I am not going to squawk about it because this fight was shit. It was really bad. And I do fault Rose more for that in the sense that watching the fight, it felt like Esparza was trying and failing to get the fight going. She was coming forward. She was trying to apply a wrestling game. This is what Carla Esparza does. And Rose was neutralizing her with backwards foot movement, trying to play her reach game, and just not really engaging. Not necessarily a bad idea, but it needed something more to it. It needed activity. It needed a champion who lands more than 10 strikes per round as opposed to landing more than 10 strikes in 2 out of 5 rounds. That's insanely low output. So in that regard, I do blame Rose more. I'm moderately happy that Carla won, and um but she's not keeping the belt very long because the winner of Zhang versus Joanna probably gets that title shot, probably. And I think both are going to just wreck her because they're not going to be as mentally fragile as Rose. And it seems weird to say that about Rose because I think Rose is, given the right circumstances, very mentally strong. She got to a UFC title twice, but this fight just seemed to me like a fight that I've lost to this person before, and it wasn't like losing to Andrade where it was a sudden finish type deal. I've lost this person before. I was very clearly beaten by this person. I don't want to say destroyed by this person, but I was handily defeated, and I'm worried about it. I'm afraid to engage. I'm afraid to be offensive. Because Thug Rose can fight at a higher pace than this. We've seen that. You cannot get to a UFC title fighting like this. You really, 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 really cannot. Especially at the strawweight division, where things are, if not the most technical, then at least pretty highly paced. So I don't know. This fight's terrible, and please do not rematch it. Please, 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 please. Give Joanna or Weili Zhang the title shot, or Jessica Andrade, or hell, even Mariana Rodriguez. Anything but the rematch of these two fighters, because I do not want to see it. It was bad. 68 total strikes landed, 67 significant strike. God, no. And no, it's so much fainting. It's just no. I don't know. I part of the sporting part of my brain wants to say that the wrong person won, but oh god, I don't care. I can't summon a care. I cannot. Moving on down the card. This is where we would have gotten into the sort of depressing run of fights that I was talking about. I don't really know how to say this, but like Cerrone versus Lozon being removed from the card actually was good, in my opinion, because I really could have seen us having 3 really sad fights here. Like the Shogun OSP fight, I don't know if sad is the right word, but I mean, it was clearly a fight between 2 guys that aren't really physical capable of like doing high level stuff anymore, realistically. And as a result, it was a pretty tepid fight, ending a split decision for OSP. I think I agree with the decision, and it's not just because I picked OSP to win. If we pull up the stats here, stats are not everything. But the first round was very, very even. Shogun won the second round. Oven St. Preux won the third round. So how you see the first round really more or less defines how you scored the fight. Like if you thought Shogun won, I don't have a problem with it. I don't object to it in any way. You could give Shogun rounds 1 and 2, and it's fine. It's totally fine. OSP only definitively, I think, won the third round. I think he landed more shots. I think he landed the better shots, and that's the thing. I think people might look at his backing off in a lot of the rounds as a bad thing, but I've kind of always said this, like, aggression for aggression's sake really should not win you rounds. Like, I should not be able to win a fight against somebody by just moving forward and eating punches. Not that that was what Shogun was doing, but I mean, if you're backing off and you're landing strikes of comparable value which I think was this fight. I don't think either guy was like getting tremendously better quality in, and I'm landing similar quantities. And it shouldn't. The aggression hasn't been effective. And yeah, so I kind of jumped the Chandler Ferguson fight to quickly talk about the OSP thing. Retirement. I know. I'm always like a little bit uncomfortable telling fighters to retire because I have no idea what's going on in their lives. They may really honestly need this, but Shogun for some time has been at the point where I don't really want to see him fight it anymore. OSP is kind of in the same boat. Shogun because of physical fragility and worry, frankly. And in OSP's case, I was never the most interested in seeing him fight to begin with because outside of being like kind of interestingly good at the Von Flue choke and being really athletic, there wasn't really a lot to his game. And the athleticism has very much faded. And left in its place is a low output, plodding, more technical than I probably gave him credit for striker, but it's not someone who's going to have interesting fights with anyone that you want to see him fighting. And that to me is just not really all that interesting. So you guys both got out here on a main card. OSP got a win. Nice time to go out on top. For Shogun, he's talked about retirement before. He did actually say he was retired at one point. And I kind of hope he does it now. Their bodies just aren't up to the task of what they used to be. And it's sad, but it is also, that's the game. Father Time is largely undefeated, except against Francisco Trinaldo, who we'll talk about later. So yeah, talk about the Chandler versus Ferguson fight. Ferguson looked better than expected, honestly. Like, he hurt Chandler. That's not all that exciting, necessarily, all the thing, but like, he didn't look self-destructing. Like, kind of ironically, like in a fight where he gets finished in the second round in explosive fashion via front kick, it was probably the best showing he's had in a while. He looked competent on the feet. He looked a little bit like old Togi, but yeah, at the same time. So here's the thing. Tony Ferguson's entire career was defined by like unorthodoxy. He's unpredictable. He's unusual, whatever. Basically a lot of, he does things that other people don't do. Both in training and in the cage. And to be clear, there is such a thing as innovation in MMA, where someone starts doing something that no one else is really doing, and it catches on, it becomes part of the normal ethos. But most of the time when someone is doing something that no one else is doing and getting away with it, it's because they have some physical quality that is unusual and at the higher end of the physical spectrum within the sport. And for Tony, that was kind of everything. He was fast, he was strong, he was exceptionally durable, and he got away with a lot of things that you should not do. There's a reason that a textbook fighter is a textbook fighter. It's because they develop the skills that can allow them to continue to compete beyond the fading of their athletic and physical abilities, and Tony has hit the wall. I still think Tony can beat some people. He just has to go way down the division to actually do it. And does he want to? Like, that's kind of the thing with Tony, is I don't think he wants to do that. So what do you do with him? Because you could send him out there to fight some top 10 fighter, and he's probably going to lose. This is a deep division. This is a division where everyone is actually at the top is a pretty good athlete, realistically speaking. He's not going to have huge advantages, and he's definitely fading. His durability is kind of going away. Although in this fight, I think that anyone who eats that front kick from Chandler probably is going out. So I don't think that this stoppage is reflective of his declining durability. But he's increasingly become easier and easier to hurt, even if not to finish. And once Chandler got his wrestling going, Ferguson's offense kind of uh, shifted down several gears and wasn't really where it was at the start of the fight. So, I mean, I don't know what to do with him. I don't know what to do with him. He won't retire. I think he's too crazy for that. But I also don't know who I want to see him fight. Chandler called out Conor McGregor, and to be honest, that's the fight I would do, because as much as I just said that they may actually end up giving Conor McGregor a title shot, I think the Chandler fight gives everything that you want for a Conor McGregor fight. I really do. I think it's a winnable fight for Conor because I think Chandler has significant defensive gaps in his game that can be capitalized on. I think that, Ferguson hurt him here in the first round reasonably badly. But it's a big enough name. Like, Chandler's got a big name, despite just a 2-2 record in the UFC, to face off with Conor, and people respect the name, and he also can handle the promotion aspect of it. He's a good talker. I think that's an excellent fight to make. And if I were the UFC, that's the one I would make. Of course, the UFC may give Conor a title shot, so I don't know, or give him another crack at Poirier. Another fight you could do, I guess, would be Chandler versus Poirier. That would be pretty interesting. That's a fight at the top of the division that doesn't really take away from the title picture, because they both have lost to Charles Oliveira, who I'm essentially treating as the champion, because Dana said, you basically are still the champion. You're the number one contender, so on. So he's going to be one half of the vacant title fight. So that kind of cuts off the idea that, like, Chandler is a super interesting challenger in that regard. He did call out Charles Oliveira. He did call out Gaethje. He wants rematches with both of them. I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. But I would do something new for him first. I would, like I said, I would do the Conor McGregor fight. You could do the Poirier fight, but I think Conor is the one that makes the most sense. It's not a fight that Conor's going to instantly lose, which is good. It's a fight that I think will sell, and it's a fight where two guys can do the talking. Make it happen. Then we move down to Randy Brown versus Chaos Williams. I picked Chaos Williams. I thought the first round went a lot like what I expected from the fight. Williams just not being terribly bothered by Randy Brown's range, not being terribly bothered by Randy Brown's physical attributes, and getting in there, mixing it up, and capitalizing on the fact that you can make Randy Brown pretty uncomfortable. And the first round, I think, really saw that. I think Chaos Williams won that round. Then the problem was I think Randy Brown sort of realized that Chaos Williams' striking game isn't all that deep. He's giving me very similar looks, and he got comfortable. I would honestly say he got too comfortable, because he started doing the Anderson Silva hands down dance and actually got kind of walloped for it. But I think he won the second round very clearly. Though I think the commentary was way too in the pocket for Randy Brown in that second round. I'm not suggesting like a conspiracy theory or like a bias necessarily. I just think that they did a bad job of calling the action, because they gave Williams credit for essentially nothing. And yes, Randy Brown was doing the impressive things with the shoulder roll and the head movement and making it miss, but he was getting hit a fair bit. That really was kind of completely ignored. Actually, Williams apparently landed more in the second round than he did in the first round. It's just that Brown landed far, far more than he did in the first round in the second round. So there you go. And then the third one is kind of interesting. It's one where, like, Brown won most of the round. He got he got more shots in. I think he largely got like pretty even quality shots as well, but he did get hurt and knocked out. So does Williams win that one? So I don't know. It's a fight that could go either way. I don't have a problem with Randy Brown winning it. I don't have a problem with it being a split. But it could have easily gone to Chaos Williams, because I think he won the first round. And then I also think that the knockdown in the third round could be enough to steal the round away from Randy Brown. As for what to do with these guys next, I'm going to pull up the UFC rankings here, because as much as I prefer the Tapology rankings, because number one, they actually go way further down. The UFC rankings are inevitably going to be more important here, and these two are both kind of looking at a top 15 opponent, I would think. Particularly Randy Brown, who won this fight. For Randy, Jeff Neal is still in the top 15. That's interesting and weird. Have they had a dance before? Have they been the dance partners before? Because if not, I'm kind of interested, because it's a kind of a better version, a more technical version of Chaos Williams. Jeff Neal's not booked. He is coming off a win. I like that fight. And for Chaos Williams, I don't know. Williams is kind of like just a high-level action fighter and interesting. So, I mean, you could do something with like Nico Price, or you could do something with Eliza Zaleski. You could do something with Alex Morono, which, well, they already fought, so scratch the Morono fight. Max Griffin, maybe? I don't think they fought. So, a lot of interesting options for Williams, even if I do think he might be a little hard capped. He's just not very deep as a technical anything. He's a physical force. He does change speeds nicely, but when it comes down to it, that second round with Randy Brown really just showed, like, Brown is like, okay, I know what's coming at me. I'm comfortable. I'm feeling good, feeling slick, and let's get this done. And that kind of was the rest of the fight. Onwards to the undercard. Francisco Trinaldo beat Danny Roberts. Again, like I said, they say Father Time is undefeated, but Father Time has not gotten its mitts on Francisco Trinaldo. 43 years old, still doing his thing, still looking very physically intact and everything. He's fighting at an increasingly slower rate. Like, he was never a super high pace fighter, but like, it does feel like he is lower and lower and lower. But he came out and he put a walloping on Danny Roberts, the younger man. And in hindsight, I probably should have picked Trinaldo. I think I said in my breakdown video that I was like, and podcast, I was really mixed on this fight. I was very not confused, because I confusion indicates that, like, I didn't understand the dynamic. I really did, but at the same time, like, Danny Roberts does kind of confuse me by being really undurable, like really easy to hurt, not necessarily easy to knock out, but like really easy to hurt. And that was kind of the thing in this fight. Anytime he had momentum going, anytime he had a roll going, he would get smacked, and he would fall down without being able to find a way back into the fight. What do you do with Trinaldo next? I don't know. He's kind of in the mold of like guy who could fall apart at any second now. He's 43 years old. I don't know. Tapology's got him number 40 at welterweight. And the guys around him and the guys above him are all like not UFC fighters, except for like Warley Alves and Jeremiah Wells. Not really sure I love either of those fights. You know what? Actually, you know what? Okay, he's coming off a loss, so it's a little bit unappealing in that regard, but throw him in there with Jake Matthews. That could be interesting. As for Danny Roberts, I think he's just like incredible. He's just flawed to the point where I don't think it can work. Like, he doesn't have the physicality, and he's in his 30s, so he's not going to change up to become a wrestler, grappler at this point in his career, and he's too easy to hurt. So I'm not saying cut him. I'm not saying I don't want to see him fight. I'm just saying I don't have a strong desire or urge to matchmake him, because being low output and being easy to hurt is just not like it's a lot of losing matchups. So I don't know what you do with them. Another split decision, BCGA versus Norman Dumas. Not really sure why this one was a split. I didn't like the 30-27 that someone gave Chasen. I believe that was Who was it that gave the 30-27? It's either Chris Flores or Eric Colon, but they've got it. The way they have it here, it suggested they scored a 30-27 for Dumas. So I don't know. Weird way that they have the scorecards being shown here. But anyways, one of them gave it a 30-27. To be honest, 30-27 either way is pretty unacceptable. I think that the first round went to Chiesa. She got the takedown. She got the better of the striking exchanges. In the second round, it was probably again Chiesa. The striking was pretty even. But you had some takedowns, some top control for Chiesa. And then in the third round, I really have to give it to Dumas. I know Chiesa landed a lot, but it was very ineffectual stuff. They only credited her with 3 significant strikes, and she got hurt a bunch. So I don't know. The third round I gave to Dumont, and that's why I really can't see this as a 30-27. Essentially, for Chiesa, this fight went largely like I thought it would. She's not very comfortable at range, so she resorts to clinching and wrestling, and she's a bit sloppy at it. The difference essentially is that Dumont couldn't find range. Dumont couldn't find separation, couldn't create a environment where she could utilize her better put together striking game to win this fight. And that's what I thought she would do. Instead, she just got pressured. She got smashed in the clinch a couple times. She did the thing that I absolutely hate fighters doing, is she would get stuck in the clinch with Chiesa, and not a lot would be happening, admittedly. But her, instead of trying to break the clinch, working to break the clinch, working for underhooks or anything like that, she would look at the ref like, come on, she's not doing anything. And it doesn't even matter if it's justified and the other person isn't doing anything. That's an incredibly disappointing sign, because it's kind of like looking for fouls. It's not that fouls aren't happening. It's not that inactivity isn't happening. But you're never going to make the referee actually break it up. So instead of putting effort into appealing to the referee for something, fight. I have no idea what to do with either of these women, because, if they're fighting at 145, there is effectively no 145 division. So, I mean, Jason might be getting a title shot off this. That's not much to do. Brandon Royval submitted Matt Schnell with a cool one-arm guillotine. This was a super scrambly fight, super fun. Royval versus Moreno is a fight that he wants. Not actually opposed to it. Not opposed to a rematch with Kai Kara-France either, although Kai Kara-France probably is going to get the title shot. So, yeah, sure. Do Royval Moreno. It's a fun matchup. It's interesting. It's fun. And for Matt Schnell, I don't know. I like Matt Schnell. I really do. He was fighting in this fight after his mother had passed away, and to look, as good as he did here with that kind of emotional weight on him, is very impressive. But at the same time, I do think that there's just some physical limitations to his game that they're not going to go away. And it's also a very, like 145 in the women's side, it's a very, very small division in terms of the number of fighters. Like it's not a pun about 125-pound fighters. That's just a pun of like there's not a lot of bodies in the division, and he's fought a lot of them. They still got him at number 9 in the rankings here, so I don't know. Maybe something like David Dvorak could be pretty fun. I think that's a fresh matchup. I think that's a pretty interesting matchup. And I think it's one in which he probably won't be tremendously physically outmatched. So it's a winnable fight for him. So let's go with that one. Dvorak's also coming off a loss. So that makes, to me, that makes a lot of sense. Andre Fiallo, pardon me, I'm skipping the heavyweight fight. It was bad. Blago Ivanov won. Neither guy has great cardio. I thought Ivanov's would last better. Lima didn't even really put up a huge pace in round number 1. I don't have much more to say about it. I think my derision for heavyweight MMA is kind of well known. The freak show big one punch power doesn't necessarily appeal to me all that much, and the lack of technique frustrates me and flummoxes me. So there's that. And I'm a big guy, so this should be my jam. Andre Fiallo knocked out Cameron Van Camp. Not much to say about this. He'll probably fight on the Singapore card. He wants to, so whatever the UFC wants to do with him. Van Camp is just... Van Camp did better than I expected, actually. He kind of hurt Fiallo. Actually showed good skills, so I don't know. Maybe in this loss, his stock goes up because his stock was pretty damn low. He'll probably get another chance because... Well, I don't know about that, actually, because they signed him originally as a late notice replacement for a fight, and then did not retain his services. So I don't know. They might not. Because I'm pretty sure they ended up letting... Yeah, he's booked to fight Nicholas Mata back in September. I don't know. I guess he didn't take a fight after that. So maybe they took a long time, like 8 months, to get him another fight. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they really think he's going to be a long-term investment or whatever. Then we had Tracy Cortez versus Melissa Gatto. The lesson of this fight is essentially Gatto's got to learn to defend takedowns because she lost this fight pretty much entirely on that. Like, she had the better striking. She had the more threatening grappling, the more venomous grappling. I think you could make an argument that she actually won the fight because a lot of Cortez's positions didn't lead to anything, really, if we're being completely honest. Let's just have a look at the fight stats here real quick and see if we can glean anything. I know the fight stats are, number one, not available to judges, and number two, not always the most accurate thing on the planet. But I think I was maybe remembering this a little bit too well because it looks like Cortez did actually outland her in 2 out of 3 rounds. So yeah, I don't know. It's still a fight where like I find myself more excited about what Gatto can be if she works on her wrestling than on what Cortez can be, because Cortez does feel like kind of a finished product. Although she can get her cardio sorted out at 125 and the weight cut sorted out at 125, because while she certainly didn't fade in this fight, she didn't gas in this fight, it was also a really slow-paced fight. So I don't think this was one that really stretched her cardio the same way that the Justine Kish fight did. And even Justine Kish is not a particularly high-paced fighter. So I still think that there are fighters at 125 that can just kind of outlast her. And she needs to get that underway, but she is super powerful. She is a one-dimensional wrestler, but hey, women's flyweight is not known exactly for the deepest, most well-rounded talent pool around. For what these ladies should fight next, I don't really know. In Cortez's case, I would like to see her fight someone who is a strong wrestler, because I want to see like what happens there. And there's a couple of options there that we could see her up against. I looking at the wrong rankings here. There we are. So where are they on this pile here? Where did they don't have them in the top 15. Interesting. How about Cynthia Calvillo for Cortez? That could be that. Yeah, I like that. I actually do like that. And then with Gatto, it kind of depends. Like, do we want to give her like a lot of time to work on her counter wrestling, and when she's booked, just give her kind of like, I don't want to say free wins because there's no such thing as a free win, but give her matchups that are just going to deliver like exciting fights while she develops those skills? Or do we want to constantly challenge those skills? I would probably take the first approach for the next fight. Give her someone who's more aligned with a Joanne Calderwood or something. Not necessarily Joanne Calderwood herself, but someone who while capable of doing some clinch work and some wrestling, isn't really a wrestling first opponent. See what she does with that. And yeah, I don't know. There's interesting things for both ladies on the horizon, I think, at the end of the day. CJ Vergara got a lucky decision against Clitzen Rodriguez. This is the one fight that I think really should have gone the other way. I think watching it live, I actually didn't have much of a problem because I thought that in the third round, which is basically the pivotal round here, that Rodriguez didn't do enough with his positions. Then I watched it again, just like with an eye of like purely scoring the fight. I don't really understand how you can give Vergara that third round. He got outlanded. He was out grappled. He had a back control with a calf slicer for a large portion of the round applied to him. He had a great second round, and I do think that this pumps the brakes on Rodriguez as a prospect. Now, to be clear, I think Rodriguez is still fine. I just think that there maybe is some development to go there. I think that maybe we jumped the gun in assuming that he was a bit more of a finished product than he is, because that second round was brutal. He got kind of stomped on in that second round by CJ Vergara. That's something that should not happen to someone who is getting some of the accolades and comparisons that Rodriguez is getting. But he still is a really physically special specimen. And he showed us in the first round what he can do, which is a lot. He dominated the stand-up exchanges. And in the third round, he showed great toughness and comeback ability and like heart. So like there's a lot of building blocks there. I just think that there are some things that need to be added on to him before we can really get super, super hyped. Lupita Godinez beat Ariane Carnelossi. There were some people that were criticizing a 30-27 for Godinez and not giving a 10-8 round anywhere. I think that there was a time not that long ago where like judges were giving out 10-8s at what I thought was a way more applicable rate to for MMA. And then they were kind of told to stop doing that. So I think anytime a judge doesn't give a 10-8 in a round that probably deserves a 10-8, because there were some 10-8 worthy rounds here, I don't think we should be surprised. I think we should look at to a degree, the UFC, which pushed for like going back to more 10-9s, and the athletic commissions for like more or less, trying to bring us back to a land where 10-8s are virtually impossible and you have to kill someone. So I don't blame the judges, even if I think that is the wrong scorecard. I think there should be 10-8s in this fight. But Godinez went out there and destroyed it. And to be honest, Carnelossi's a really, really physical specimen. So to do that to her it's a big deal. Does that put her in the rankings? I guess that's the big question here. Is Godinez now a ranked strawweight? It doesn't look like she is, which is kind of disappointing because I'm looking at some of the. I mean, I guess she lost to Jessica Penne, who is number 14, but Brianna Fortino is still in the top 15, so I don't know. And not per se a robbery. So let's pull up the Tapology here, because I'm really interested where she goes after this, because she's a bit one-dimensional, but she's very, very, very good at that dimension. So Tapology's got her at number 19. The two ahead of her are Suarez and Murata. I don't think either of those really work. How high up do we have to go? Oh, wait. I thought about this the other night. Her and Liana Pinheiro. Do that fight. I want that fight. That fight is dope. That fight is perfect for their two one-note games, but super fun and should bring some excellent clinch stuff and maybe some throws and things. I'm down with that. 100% down with that fight. And as for Carnelossi, don't know. I still have a lot of hope for her. She still is a physical freak, but her 2 wins have aged kind of poorly, and her 2 losses have been kind of definitive. So I'm not sure what you do with her. But I don't know. You give her a rebuilding fight, I guess, and let her develop. She's reasonably young, I think. I think she's in her 20s, 20, 28 or so, I think. Tapology will provide me with the answer. 29. So she's young enough still to develop further. And yeah, I just think that with her, there is too much willingness and too much comfort in like going into the clinch and like trying to physically exchange physicality with people because she's used to being stronger and being able to just kind of hoss her way through the clinch. And against anyone who's actually good in the clinch, that's a losing recipe. And that was this fight in a nutshell. So yeah, predictable outcome, but not the end of the road. Journey Newsom beat Fernie Garcia. I'm not sure that this means a tremendously great amount about Journey Newsom. I think it just means Fernie Garcia is not very good. I picked Fernie Garcia, so obviously I saw something in it, but all I saw was that like Newsom's super fragile. Like he's a smaller version of Danny Roberts in a way. And I just thought that Garcia, who does hit reasonably hard from some like awkward angles, might hurt him and finish him. When that didn't happen, the differences in the fact that Garcia doesn't have a UFC caliber striking game, grappling game, or wrestling game kind of really came to the forefront. He's also incredibly awkward when it comes to defending kicks. It's amazing that he. I wanna make sure that I'm right in saying this. He's a Fortis MMA guy. Yes, he is. Fortis MMA is like this weird gym to me because, on one way, I'm impressed with the fact that they've produced so many different archetypes of fighters with different strengths and different ways to win fights. Because a lot of gyms tend to be archetypal. You think of like Team Quest or Milicic fighting systems. There was a type of fighter there. You think of AKA. There's a type of fighter there that they produce. But Fortis is more like, to a degree, ATT, but I think ATT is more like a finishing school. But they're like producing a lot, like such a vast array of different fighters. But at the same time, it's amazing that some of the flaws into these fighters is like developing. Like in Garcia's case, it's the like just poor footwork where he'll get really side on and the inability to defend leg kicks in a proper way. Like it's just bizarre. The versatility of the gym, but also the fact that like all of their fighters have like missing fundamental skills, but it's a different missing fundamental skill like every time. I don't really have much of the way of thoughts for either of these guys in the future. Garcia has too many like just fundamental flaws to his game to really particularly pick him going forward. And Journey Newsom is still fragile. Nothing about this fight really like dissuaded me from the fact that he is kind of like a Danny Roberts. He has all the physical gifts. He's apparently a good grappler, although we really haven't seen it. He's not a bad striker. He's reasonably deep, creative, has good power, but as long as he is kind of crackable, bantamweight's going to be a rough place for him. So that's why there's not really a tremendous amount for me to get excited about there. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So that was the fight card. I thought, like I said, you had some really, really high moments on this card. Yes, the co-main event sucked. I believe me and the people I was watching with described it as quite possibly the worst title fight that we've ever seen. Because I mean, people tend to like have like Arlovsky Sylvia 3 and Talis Latis versus Anderson Silva or Demian Maia versus Anderson Silva. I don't know. This didn't even have like the playfulness of Anderson Silva. This didn't have the brimming possible violence and destruction of people's chins that Sylvia and Arlovsky had. It just had passivity and a lot of fainting and a lot of not really engaging. So there you go. I will talk to you guys later on this week. We'll be breaking down what is the next UFC fight night. We've also got a Bellator card here and an Invicta card here. I might talk about the Invicta card. I haven't talked about an Invicta card on here yet, outside of the Zapatella Delboni card. But if there's no Bellator or if there's no PFL, might be worth. Oh, it's the random's title shot for Zapatella going up a weight class. I don't really get that one against Emily Ducati. It's an interesting enough fight. Lindsey Van Zandt's on the card. I like her. Janessa Morandin's on the card. I like her. It's not a ton to talk about there, but I don't know. There's some things. There are some things which we could talk about. And then for Bellator, it's MVP versus Logan Storley with not a lot else. I think this is the Paul Daly retirement fight, actually. So there's that. You know what? Daniel Weichel, Robert Whiteford. That could be a good fight. That could be fun. Mark Lemminger versus Oliver Enkamp. It's interesting. Ooh, excuse me. Had a burp there. And Denise Kielholtz is on the card. I don't know. Along with Lyoto Machida. But Lyoto Machida versus Fabian Edwards. Like, is that a super interesting fight? I don't know. And then in the UFC, we've got a fight night coming up from Las Vegas, Nevada, the Apex Center, of course. Jan Blachowicz versus Alexander Rakic. I'm actually really looking forward to that fight. I think that could be very interesting. Ryan Spawn versus Jan Kudalaba. That could be fun. Louis Smolka versus Davey Grant. That could be fun. Kate Luchikagian versus Amanda Hebus. Could be fun. Could also be really terrible. Camacho versus Manuel Torres. Jake Hadley versus Alan Nascimento. I've heard good things about Jake Hadley, though, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. Vivian Araujo versus KGB Lee. It's not bad. Michael Johnson, Alan Patrick. It's weird that both those guys are on contract still, to be honest. Vernate Jandaroba versus Angela Hill. Not bad. Carlos Candelara versus Tetsuya Taira. Not sure what to make of that one. I broke that one down on a previous episode, but not sure what to make of it. And oh god, Nick Maximov versus Andre Petrosky. Why? Oh. I think you know where I'm going with that one. Okay. Well, that's going to be the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you will tune in next time.